Hi guys, it's Emma AITA, your favorite AI slop tuber. Before we jump into today's video, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and ring the bell so you never miss an upload. Thanks so much for your support. Now, let's get right into the video. AITA for moving across the country for my dream job and leaving my sister to take care of our sick dad. When I, 29 million, graduated with my master's in data science, I had two things: a crushing student loan and a dream. I'd spent years grinding through night classes, part-time gigs, and a soul-sucking junior analyst position just to get where I was, competitive, driven, and ready for something better. For most of my life, I'd lived in Pennsylvania, in a quiet, unassuming town where everybody knew your business and dreams were the kind of thing people talked about wistfully over barbecues, not the kind of thing they actually chased. My family is firmly blue-collar. Dad was a mechanic for 40 years. Mom worked retail until she died from breast cancer 5 years ago. And my older sister, Renee, 34F, teaches second grade at the same elementary school we both attended as kids. She's rooted, planted, stable, everything I am not. We were always close, Renee and I, especially after Mom passed. She became something of a second mother to me in those last few years, not in a condescending way, but in the quiet, competent way she'd always had. She helped manage the funeral, cooked for Dad when he stopped taking care of himself, and checked in on me when I buried myself in work. She never complained. She just did what had to be done. It was her nature. When I landed an interview for a senior data role at a hot AI startup in Seattle, I didn't tell Renee right away. I wasn't hiding it, not exactly. But I knew how it would sound, that I was ditching the family when they needed me. But the truth was, I needed a change. I needed more. I didn't want to rot in my hometown, working remote jobs in my childhood bedroom while the rest of the world innovated. I was good at what I did. I deserved a shot. The interview went well. 2 rounds turned into 3 turned into a case project, and before I knew it, they offered me the position. Full-time, high 6 figures, stock options, relocation assistance, the works. It was everything I'd worked for, the kind of job that could set me up for life. When I finally told Renee over coffee one Sunday, her face didn't change much. She just stirred her cup, took a sip and said, "That's amazing, Alex." Really. But I could feel something shift between us. Subtle, like a hairline fracture under pressure. "What about Dad?" she asked finally. "What about Dad?" "You know what I mean." I didn't answer right away. The thing is, Dad had been in rough shape since Mom died. His health declined gradually at first: blood pressure, cholesterol, minor surgeries. But the real turning point was his stroke last fall. It left him with a limp, slurred speech and cognitive issues that ebbed and flowed depending on the day. He wasn't entirely dependent, but he wasn't fully independent either. Renee had moved back in with him temporarily to help with groceries, appointments, medications. It was supposed to be for a few months. That was a year ago. "I'm not abandoning him," I said carefully. "You're still here, and I'll visit. I can fly home whenever." Flights aren't caregiving, Alex. That stuck with me. It bounced around in my head for days. I didn't want to fight. I didn't want to hurt her. But I also didn't want to give up the opportunity of a lifetime because our father, a man who'd barely spoken to me with warmth since high school, happened to need more help than we ever anticipated. When I told her I was accepting the job, she nodded slowly and just said, "Okay." No tears, no yelling. Just, "Okay." And then she left my apartment without finishing her coffee. I moved to Seattle a month later. Seattle was everything I hoped it would be. My new apartment had floor-to-ceiling windows, modern appliances, and the kind of view that made you feel like you'd finally made it. Work was intense, sure, but I thrived under pressure. I was surrounded by some of the smartest people I'd ever met, working on projects that actually felt meaningful. For the first time in my adult life, I wasn't surviving. I was living. My salary doubled within 6 months. I was speaking at conferences. People wanted to hear my ideas. I felt seen. But even as I climbed higher, there was always a voice in the back of my mind whispering about Renee, about Dad. I FaceTimed when I could. I sent money when she wouldn't ask for it but clearly needed it. I paid for a home health aide to stop by 3 times a week, bought groceries online and had them delivered, even paid to get their car fixed when it broke down. Renee always thanked me, but her tone was clipped, polite, distant. She stopped volunteering personal details about her life. Our conversations became transactional: schedules, doctor appointments, financial logistics. 6 months after I moved, I flew back for Dad's birthday. He was worse than I remembered. Thinner, slower, more confused. He called me Matthew 3 times, which was our cousin's name. Renee looked exhausted. There were deep shadows under her eyes, and her clothes hung off her like she'd forgotten to eat for weeks. She smiled for Dad, laughed when prompted, but as soon as we were alone, she dropped the act. "You said you'd visit more," she said quietly. "I know. Work's been— Yeah, work. I'm doing my best, Renee." She didn't reply to that, just turned and started washing the dishes like she hadn't heard me. I left that night feeling like a ghost. I offered again to increase the home aid visits, even floated the idea of hiring a full-time nurse. Renee said no. "He doesn't want strangers in the house all day," she insisted. "And anyway, some things you can't outsource." I tried to push back, but she cut me off. "It's not about the money, Alex. It's about presence. He doesn't remember your name anymore because he never sees your face." That stung, more than I wanted to admit. But I didn't know what else to do. I had a life now, a life I'd built on my own. Was I really expected to throw that all away? Move back into that crumbling house? Take care of a man who'd never told me he was proud of me once in my life? Renee made it seem like I owed them something, like my success was built on her sacrifice. But she never asked for help before I left. She never said she wanted me to stay. Maybe she assumed I'd just know. Maybe that was my fault. 3 more months passed. I got a promotion. I started dating a woman named Celia. Kind, funny, sharp. She asked me once about my family, and when I told her the basics, she said, "You sound guilty." I laughed it off. "Maybe I am," I said. But the truth was, the guilt had become like background radiation, always present, humming just beneath the surface. And then came the voicemail that changed everything. It was Renee. Her voice was strained, tight. "Hey, Dad fell this morning. He's okay, but he hit his head and he's been in and out of it since the ER visit. They want to keep him overnight, maybe longer. I'm tired, Alex. I can't keep doing this alone. Please call me back." I flew home the next morning. When I walked into the hospital room, I barely recognized the man in the bed. My father, once broad-shouldered, gruff, commanding, now looked like a pale, deflated version of himself. He was hooked up to monitors, a faint bruise blooming on his temple, his breathing shallow but steady. Renee sat beside him, arms crossed tightly across her chest, like she was holding herself together through sheer force of will. She didn't say much when I arrived, just gave me a tired nod and stood to stretch her legs. I sat in her place, watching the rise and fall of Dad's chest, and for the first time in years, I felt the full weight of what she'd been carrying. When she came back, I said, "I can take a few weeks off, maybe work remote from here." She shook her head. "He'll be home by then. It's not the emergencies that wear you down, it's everything in between." There was a silence, the kind that feels like a question hanging in the air. I didn't know how to answer it. We brought Dad home 2 days later. The hospital sent an occupational therapist to evaluate the house, and the verdict wasn't good. Narrow hallways, no grab bars, stairs to the bathroom. I offered again to pay for renovations. Renee waved it off. "We've adapted," she said, as if she'd already accepted this decrepit space as permanent. Over the following week, I tried to help. Really, I did. I cleaned, cooked, managed his medications, organized his mail. I even installed a few safety features myself. But Dad barely responded to me. Sometimes he'd ask me who I was. Other times he'd just stare at the wall and mutter phrases I couldn't decipher. Renee, meanwhile, moved through the house like a quiet storm, efficient, fast, slightly irritated by my clumsiness. She'd adjusted to a rhythm I didn't know, and my attempts to contribute only seemed to disrupt it. On my last night in town, we sat outside on the back porch. The sky was that dull winter gray that feels like it swallows the world. Renee lit a cigarette, a habit she'd picked up since Mom died, and said, "I know you think I'm mad at you." "I don't think, I know." She exhaled slowly. "You're right, I was mad. Still am sometimes. But not because you left. Because you got to leave." I didn't know what to say to that. I couldn't argue. It was true. "You're not selfish," she continued. "You did what you had to, what you wanted to. That's not a crime." "But it feels like one," I admitted. She turned to look at me then, her eyes sharp. "Then come back, stay, be here, share this." I hesitated. I thought about my job, my apartment, Celia, the work I was doing, the identity I'd finally found after years of not knowing who I was outside this family. And then I asked the question I'd been avoiding. Would that actually help? Or would it just make both of us miserable? She didn't answer. Just flicked the ash off the end of her cigarette and looked away. That night, we didn't speak again. I packed quietly the next morning, kissed Dad on the forehead. He didn't stir, and left before Renee got out of bed. Back in Seattle, life picked up where it left off. Celia moved in. My job expanded. We took a trip to Iceland. I spoke at 2 tech conferences and got offered equity in a spin-off project. Things were good, really good. But every time Renee texted me a photo of Dad, a new bruise, a confused stare, a birthday cupcake with a candle he couldn't blow out, I felt the weight settle again in my chest. And then, a few weeks ago, she asked me a question that forced everything back to the surface. Would you be willing to sell the house? When Renee asked if I'd be willing to sell the house, I didn't know what to say. The house wasn't technically in my name. It was still Dad's. But given his condition, Renee had taken over all legal decisions through a power of attorney. The idea, she explained, was to move Dad into a long-term care facility nearby, one that specialized in cognitive decline and stroke rehabilitation. She couldn't do it anymore, she said. Not alone. Not like this. I've looked at a place, she said over the phone, her voice tight. It's clean, it's safe, and it's not cheap. I did the math. Selling the house would cover about 1.5 years of care, maybe 2. I could chip in to extend that. But it wasn't just about the money. It was about what the house represented. The last physical link to our childhood, our parents, our history. And Renee wanted to let it go. I asked her if she was sure. She said she'd never been more sure of anything in her life. So we sold it. I flew home again to help pack things up. It was surreal, walking through those halls one last time, seeing my old bedroom still cluttered with forgotten trophies and faded posters, the kitchen with its chipped tiles and Mom's sun-bleached calendar from 2017 still pinned to the fridge. Renee didn't cry until the moving truck pulled away. I didn't cry until I got back to Seattle. Now, with Dad settled in the facility and Renee finally renting a small apartment of her own, I thought maybe things would go back to normal, or as normal as they could be. But then last week, during a rare candid call, Renee said something that keeps replaying in my head. I know you helped. I know you gave money. But sometimes I wonder, if the roles were reversed, would you have stayed? I didn't answer. Because deep down, I knew the truth. I wouldn't have. I would have run. Just like I did. And now I'm asking myself the question I've tried to avoid this entire time. AITA? Was I the asshole for leaving? For chasing my dreams, even when it meant abandoning my family to carry the burden? Is it enough that I supported from afar? Or does real loyalty mean being physically present, no matter the cost? Celia says I did what I had to do. That it's okay to put myself first. That Renee chose to stay, and her choices don't make mine wrong. But I still hear Renee's voice at night. That quiet weariness. That unspoken resentment. So I'm here now, turning to strangers for judgment.